St. Paul says, I am reminding you, brothers and sisters, of the gospel I preached to you. He says, I'm reminding you. We need these reminders continually. It is not that only once we heard and then we keep it and we retain it, but unfortunately, the residue of the original sin in us, and because of the external influences, we easily forget. It really is not the same to practice your faith alone in some secluded location and trying to figure things out on your own, rather than come here, and what is critical, hear the word as it is being preached and reminded all the time, because either we are giving heed and an open ear to these continual reminders, thanks to which our faith will increase, or we'll be giving heed to other voices, the evil one who will be talking to us in different ways, convincing our hearts to pull away from God. Maybe not immediately and abandoning God out front, but by the way we live, what kind of style of life we assume. And St. Paul says clearly that the good news, the gospel I preached to you, which you indeed received, so the Corinthians welcomed this gospel, and in which you also stand, as opposed to being down, prostrated, and knocked down on the ground. To stand in the gospel, that means it's a posture of the resurrection, being raised, not being knocked down by the devil. But we can stand, not overrun, not knocked down by the vices, by the sins, if we are standing in what we have received. Through it, you are also being saved. If you hold fast to the word I preached to you, unless you believed in vain. I like this phrase very much, and I've been reflecting on it on different occasions, because look, just in this one phrase, St. Paul says, in the gospel that I preached to you, you're being saved right now. It's not something happening once we die, as Benedict XVI teaches, but right now, standing in this gospel, you are already oriented and going towards the salvation, so it means you are being saved now. That's very beautiful, because it shows that the salvation is not an event that happens out of the blue, like a thunderbolt that hits you, and from that point on you're saved and you're just cruising on a high altitude undisturbed by any wind. Doesn't work like that. Standing firm in that gospel, basically you're already oriented by the teaching of Christ, and you are walking towards salvation, and these fruits of salvation are being continually experienced in us. Now you can understand why those ideas that someone lived totally away from God and all of a sudden, boom, he's being saved and all smooth. Believe me, those things are extremely rare, and it's a very slippery slope. To get someone on the other side, if you are walking further and further away from this teaching, St. Paul says, look, if you hold fast to this word I preach to you, unless you believe in vain, saying we can believe in vain because we can create our own way, our own visualization, our own image of God, and then thinking this is exactly what will save me. That's believing in vain, pointlessly. I mean, if you really look into what he's saying, he's asking, pleading with the Corinthians, don't invent your own teaching, your own word. I've seen all predominantly, for example, this one of those heresies I've seen being lived, that people are, in a way, enmeshed in sins, die in their sins, and then during the funerals, everybody says he's already in a better place. That's a huge heresy, you know? Wait a minute. I mean, this guy or that person, whom we do not know entirely, but by seeing one's own words, actions, interactions, we can say where you were standing at the end, what you were conveying, and then unrepented, not reconciled with others, he or she dies. And we already put that person in heaven. That's really a huge deception. Because St. Paul says, maybe you believed in vain. It was pointless. Again, it's a forewarning that we may not fall in the stupid way of thinking about God, as if to say, whatever I do, however I live, whatever happens in my life, God is merciful, and read the small print at the bottom of the page, meaning he doesn't care really what's happening with me. So he's merciful. This is how I understand it. And therefore, let's just live as it pleases us, completely unaffected by the gospel. That's a total stupidity. And unfortunately, many people live along these lines, not realizing that it's not really the faith that is being preached by the apostle. So later on, St. Paul clearly shows what is the core of the kerygma, the good news, like our faith in a nutshell. That Christ died for our sins in accordance with the scriptures, that he was buried, that he was raised on the third day in accordance with the scriptures. And then he appeared to Cephas, then to the 12, then he enumerates. What is critical about that? Dying for our sins, granting us new beginning. But what is beautiful in this enumeration, that Jesus Christ not only died as some people like to preach, he died for my sins. Beautiful. And it's true. Now a question is, did he appear to you? Did he walk in your life? Because generally speaking, he died for my sins. Absolutely. He was raised. True. Did your life change? Or you're still in your addictions, viciousness, anger, addictions? Think about it. Because what he's enumerating here, those people to whom the risen one appeared, meaning that their lives had before and after. When St. Paul speaks to whom Jesus Christ appeared, it was not like you can meet a celebrity on the street or even the president, that maybe you get a little ticklish feeling, you feel good, but your life is completely unaffected. It continues. Maybe even it's worse than before, which means you were proud, now you're even more proud and arrogant and vicious. I'm trying to show that when Christ, who is risen, walks into someone's life, appears, makes himself known, there is like a turning point, a milestone, what was before and what is after. For St. Paul, who considers himself and actually speaks about himself, that last of all, as to one born abnormal, he appeared to me. That's only once that he speaks about himself in these terms, like we may say a miscarriage, which means a violent, unplanned, completely sudden event in his life that marked from what was before to what happened afterwards. I really don't believe when people tell me those things. Oh, I had this fuzzy feeling and I felt good. Okay, did your life change? You keep fornicating, right? Or taking drugs. Look, you got some fuzzy feeling, funny feeling, but don't get deceived. The devil can play with you like that too. Because I met concrete people for whom the encounter with Christ was a real radical change. Here is an example. One person was sharing with me that she was not really a churchgoer, but one day she started, in a sense, being drawn to the Lord. And once in a small chapel by the road, she had this, let's say, a mystical experience. But look what happened later on. She immediately had in front of her what is good and what is bad. No gray area. And she understood, not as a command, not as a mandate on the Lord, as a sledgehammer coming down on her, but rather as a gentle and sweet invitation. You are called to cut with bad TV shows, wrong companies, things that you do around. And look, with 1 week, everything went of the negative things. She embraced faith. That was an event that marked what was before and what was after. Now you can see, okay, that was genuine. All the other stuff, oh, I felt so good. Oh, it was so nice for me. The devil can also imitate those state of souls, because, I can say like that, there is no follow-up that brings you to love the Lord and embrace His will genuinely. You understand what St. Paul speaks about? That when he says that Christ is alive, that is, He can enter our lives, He can manifest Himself and turn it around completely. We are meant to ask for this experience, and as I said, many people, many saints, and also, I would say, even ordinary people had, to a certain or greater or lesser degree, an experience of the risen Christ that changed their lives. But we may say, Lord, let yourself be known to me. I would like to experience you. I would like that you may appear to me. I don't want to live a mediocre life of faith, just being there, but enter my life. Let me know you in a more profound, meaningful, and lasting way that would mark what was before to what will follow after. That is the experience of risen Christ. This is what we believe, not in the ideas, but in the personal encounter with the risen Christ.